So, you'd like to learn some public speaking skills, or you are a public speaker and you'd like to enhance the skills you already have. I'm going to share with you some tips and ways of communicating with others that are going to help you in your public speaking. I'm aware that public speaking for a lot of people is one of the most scary things they could ever do. That's one of my objectives, is to help defuse the stress out of it all. Now, if you'd like to subscribe to this channel, why don't you do that, and you'll be notified each time they come through. So, public speaking. First of all, it's a good idea to tell people what something is not. When you're relating something, a subject or whatever's on your mind, tell people what something is not. Not only are we going to learn some principles of public speaking, but we're going to learn how to communicate effectively a subject that you're wanting to relay to the audience. So, tell people what something is not. For example, 93% of communicating is not words. 7% of communicating are the words. When we tell people what something is not, it gives them room in their thinking to be able to work out and process what something actually is. Remember that. And 93% are not words. What is it? Well, it's word inflection, it's body language, it's attitude, it's all those other things. Some people have trouble public speaking because they don't know where to put their hands. It's a great idea to practice public speaking sitting down. Right? When you're practicing, sit down and practice talking to the audience. Practice talking to people. It's a great idea, of course, to know the subject. And in doing that, you're sitting down, relaxed, there's nobody there, it's just you, and you're practicing. I love to say this to folks: practice not only makes perfect, but it makes permanent. You get it into the memory bank of what you're saying, what you're doing, and the subject that you have. So, sitting down, you're relaxed, there's nobody there, and you're just practicing talking about what you're wanting to say. When you feel confident doing that, you'll find your hands and your motion will just follow through. It's a good idea not to focus in on you. When you're public speaking, it's important to focus in on the subject that you're talking about. Defuse the stress about what people are thinking of you and what you're thinking of you. If you have a heart and a mind to relay the subject and focus in on that, then you'll begin to relax within, because your passion is not what they're thinking of you, but whether or not they're receiving the information that you're talking about. 7% is words, and when we use words, we must remember what we're doing is communicating in the language that we have. I often say to folks, silence is not the absence of words, but the presence of authority. What do I mean by that? I call it also the power of the pause. When you go silent, you draw people in. So, when you have a subject to talk about, choose the moments that you would like to go silent in. It'll become automatic over time. But what you do is you choose a moment in which to go silent. Some people, you may have heard of the pregnant pause. I call it the power of the pause, where in that moment of silence, whatever you have just said is then processed by the people that are listening to you. Remember, people's brain speed operates at a different pace. Some seem to process faster than others. It doesn't make them more or less intelligent. It just means that when you're communicating, you are allowing those who are processing longer to catch up. And also, you're giving a level of authority to what you've just said. Now, if attitude is anything, it is really important when you're public speaking. It's the attitude that you hold in relation to the subject that you're relaying. If it's important enough, then you'll have an attitude that it is. Remember, an attitude will cross a room long before you've even opened your mouth. So attitude in public speaking is fundamental to communicating. Remember, public speaking is best said this way: I am communicating a subject to the people that I'm listening to, and I care about it. If you care about the subject, you'll remember where to pause, you'll choose the moments. You'll practice on your own. There are those people, and I've been public speaking now for some decades. Scary saying that, but it's true. And I still practice today. I still write notes down. And in relation to notes, I encourage people not to write every word down. You'll develop a habit. I was going to a friend's place recently and I had to ring them up to know their address. He said to me, "You've been here a few times." I said, "I know. I don't remember how to get there because I keep following the GPS." And he gave me the address, and what did I do? I put it into the GPS, but this time I paid attention. It's a great idea not to write every word down that you're going to say. You'll become fixated more on saying it so perfectly that the audience will grow bored. What you want to do, in the old days we called them crib notes. Now I'm going to teach you, I think it might be in the next installment of this subject, how to lay out a professional speaking script for yourself so you can follow it easily. But you just simply lay out points that you're going to say. Now, if you know your subject, that's not difficult. I recently just asked a group of people to describe a candle holder. Held up the candle holder and said, "Describe it for me." Well, they had no trouble describing it. They described the color, what a candle does. It's very, very simple. When we know the subject, it's not difficult. That's why practice not only makes perfect, but it makes permanent. It's a great idea to know the subject, practice it, write down some notes that'll remind you as you go through. Now, it's not about becoming perfect the first time over. You see, you want to discover within yourself a skill. Grow the skill within from day one. I play the drums. Well, I don't play anymore, but I played in church for many years. One day I decided it might be a good idea if I went for lessons. So I went for lessons. And the fellow said, "How long have you been playing?" And I told him, and I was bragging a bit. I felt I was pretty good. He looked at me after I did a bit of a drum solo, and he said, "Oh my goodness, I have to unlearn you," bad English, "unlearn you so much. You're holding the sticks wrong, you're sitting wrong, you're doing it all wrong." I had got away with doing it wrong for so long. It took him 3 weeks to get me to unlearn what I had practiced wrong. So why don't you start from the beginning correctly? Don't write out the notes completely, right? And don't be afraid to make a mistake when you're public speaking. I do it all the time. You get a word wrong, you can always correct yourself. Don't be caught up in the impression that people have of you. Be caught up in the impression they have of the subject. Now, I've already said that before, all right? So what you want to do is write down just some notes. If you're speaking for 10 minutes, it's not hard. If you're speaking for 20 minutes, it's definitely not difficult. Just to write some notes down. What you want to have is a transitional sentence. Concentrate not just on the point, but what you're going to say between those points. Now, I was talking to an athlete who was involved in relay racing. And the fellow said to me, he said, "We're all around about as fast as each other." I said, "Well, how do you win the race?" He said, "The race is won or lost with the handover of the baton." You've seen relay races, right? And they hand the baton over. If they drop the baton or don't hand it over in a smooth way, the way they practice, the race is lost. So transitional sentences, and not a lot of people seem to twig with this straight away. They'll look at their points, but they don't know what to say between the points. A transitional sentence is just a small sentence that ties one point to the next point. Now, practice not only makes perfect, it makes permanent. Don't forget that silence is not the absence of words, but the presence of authority. Consider where you would go silent. Now, it's not silent for a minute or so. It's just a pause. That's all it has to be. Where you give impact to what you're saying. Focus in on the subject, not what the audience thinks of you, and not the impression you're wanting to give of yourself, but the impression you're wanting to give of the subject that you care about. All right, this is the first installment. We're going to get into some big detail as we go through. I hope you'll receive something. Write me a note, will you? And if you have a question about public speaking, then why don't you send me a note here? I'll read that, I'll respond, and I'll include it. Talk about making mistakes, you see, when you're talking. It's okay. Don't forget to smile. Smiling helps. I'll include it in one of my videos. So take care, and I can't wait to see some great public speakers rise and see you speaking to your audience. See them engrossed in what you have to say.